Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Happily Ever After, brought to us by Sofel. Based on the animated film of the same name, Happily Ever After was never officially released for the NES, and recently the prototype of the game was found and released for everyone to enjoy. There was a Super Nintendo version of the game made, but it was done by a different developer, and even though it has some similarities in gameplay, it is very much a different game from this one. While I'm unsure why the game was actually cancelled, it was mostly finished, and a little bit of polish would have made this another relatively solid game for the NES. The developer Sofel is actually a personal favorite of mine, as they were the ones behind the Casino Kid games, as well as the extremely underrated Dragon Fighter game. So here we go with Happily Ever After for the NES. We're going to start off the game with the opening storyline introducing the characters of Snow White, the evil Lord Malice, and then we'll be able to jump into the game itself. Pressing start at the title screen will take you right into some more dialogue with some more of the characters of the game before you finally get control of Snow White and travel into the Land of Doom. Snow White has a basic attack of using her dress in order to attack most enemies, which we'll be using in order to defeat them, but she also gains new abilities throughout the course of the game that you can use in order to cross certain terrain obstacles. While the game is a relatively typical action platformer, at the top of the screen you'll notice your hit count, which is represented by the Snow White icon and the equals 5 next to it, meaning we can take 5 hits before it's game over, and we have 4 continues at our disposal before it's complete game over. In the center is our abilities. If you press the attack button twice, you'll be able to access the menu above. Snow White will keep spinning, and you'll be able to select one of the abilities. The first one being the ability to create the sunflowers or giant flowers on the tops of the water so that you'll be able to travel along it. While you'll gain new abilities every level as you're traveling through, it's usually pretty obvious that when you make it to a spot that you won't be able to traverse, it's time to pull out one of the new abilities that you ended up earning. Some of the abilities are not even used at all, while other ones are only used one time throughout the course of the game. Sometimes you'll have to wait though for the flower to come back to this side of the lake or pond so that you'll be able to jump on it and travel across, watching out for the fish as you do so. There are items that you'll be able to collect along the way, such as random fruits, and you'll notice they don't give you health or end up giving you any score, but by defeating enemies you will rack up your score. At the end of a stage, that is when all the fruit that you've gathered is racked up and gives you a score from it there. Kinda weird that they end up doing it that way, but it's just the way the game works. I don't think the items aren't programmed at all. Right over here is the first level boss, the giant evil tree stump. It's pretty easy, it just moves back and forth, sometimes getting a little bit closer to you. If you time your hits, when you're able to hit it when it's flashing, it won't be able to do damage to you if it runs into you. So use this to your advantage and hit it a few times and it'll go down and you'll be able to move on to the next level. After defeating a boss, sometimes you will have to move to the very edge of the screen in order for it to count and be able to move you on to the next level. Probably just another one of the remnants of being the beta version of the game. At the end of the level, you'll have your score racked up as well as you'll get your new abilities, and they do a good job of explaining what your new abilities are at the end of each of the stages when you get them. Since you're getting more than one ability at a time, I'm not sure if they plan on having more levels and you would get different abilities as time went, or if they just want to give you a lot of abilities pretty early on. Either way, the more important ability that we ended up getting is the ability for the water spouts, which will allow us to get up to higher platforms once you use the ability at certain spots. Enemies here include the weird jumping enemies. Most of the time they're going to just jump right over your head. You can still hit them with your spinning move, as well as the evil wolves or dogs that will pretty much come right into your path. You have a great hitbox, and you'll be able to easily attack and hit most enemies that are going to come in contact with you. Be careful of any of the wooden bridges that end up falling apart as you're moving across them. Just keep on moving, and you should be able to make it across before they completely end up falling and would cause you to go down into the pit. Once again, double tap the B button in order to pull out your abilities and use the water spout here. You'll have to use the one on the far right so that you'll be able to get on top of the cliff area and be able to move on. Inside the cave area, you'll have a few new enemies, including the skeletons, where you can knock their head off, but their body will continue to keep on moving around. You can just try to jump over them is the best way to take care of them. You will also have some rocks that will come bouncing along your way. If you're quick enough, though, you can actually escape them. Outside here, though, is the next boss fight, this giant evil plant that will sprout out a couple of poison or petals or other flowers around that will start moving around the room. They are only released 2 at a time, and if you duck down, they won't be able to hurt you at all. They don't go low enough to actually make contact with Snow White. Anytime the flower ends up opening up, though, is when you're going to be able to deliver those hits, and after only a few, the boss will go down and we move on to the next stage. Stage number 3 has us traveling farther into the land of Doom, and the color scheme on the stage itself is quite nice, with a weird kind of technicolor rainbow effect that's going on in the waterfall behind us. Just an overall cool effect for this game. You'll also have the weird demon-like guys that were going to come and try to attack you, as well as giant boulders that are going to get in your way during the course of the level here. Here we have to summon the boulder, then quickly run backwards and duck down into this little opening so that the boulder doesn't end up running into us. Be careful on any of the platforming that you'll have to do, but overall relatively simple for NES platforming standards as you're making your way through. Now over here, pull out your menu again and use the ability to cause the earthquake that will destroy the giant rock. Once the rock has been destroyed, continue over to the right, and you'll have to use the water spout ability once again in order to jump on the water and jump up to the top and move on to the next area of the stage. Once out here, be careful of the demon that's moving, as well as the bats, which can be difficult to see because they blend easily in with the background. After a little farther in, a volcano will explode in the background, causing giant lava balls to keep falling down from the sky as you're making your way through. Just make short little stops every few steps and you'll be able to easily avoid all of those fireballs. When you make it to the edge here, though, you're going to have to use your abilities once again, and here we get to summon 2 of Snow White's animal friends. By using the ability, Skull and Batso will come, pick you up, and carry you easily over the giant gap, and right after that is the next boss fight. This evil bird will dive down towards you, and every time it does, you're going to be able to deliver a hit to it. Every time it does do a dive, though, it'll stay low for the first couple of extra movements here, allowing you to easily jump up and hit it. After it moves back and forth a couple of times, it will go back high up into the sky where you won't be able to make contact with it until it does its dive down again, though. But overall, a relatively simple fight, and you should have no problem being able to deliver hits to it when it's low to the ground, and after just a few, he'll go down and we move on to stage 4. Stage 4 is already the final level of the game, which is Lord Malice's castle. It is a maze-like castle, though, so there is a few paths that we'll have to take specifically. Making up here, you'll get a little bit of advice that'll tell you about the mirror. Once you go through the door, head over to the left side here. A creature will pop out one of the doors and try to chase you down, but just jump over its head and make it to the door at the top. In the next room, there's a bull-like demon guy who pops out of the next door, but that's the one we're going to have to take. Here, use your spin to take out the purple guy and move into the lower right corner door. Over here to the left, you'll come to the mirror. You'll actually be able to go inside the mirror and be transported to another area. Be very careful when making the jumps here on the platforms because it is that low ceiling that will cause you to immediately fall right back down. Now, this is where things get weird. There's an anti-gravity type thing, which is actually a cool mechanic, allowing you to easily hang on the ceilings when you're walking. You'll just have to get used to this. Thankfully, it doesn't last very long in the game, but still a kind of a cool concept here. You'll instantly be able to move around corners, as you can see, when you're traveling through. Work your way to the left and up into that door there, then make a short jump into the upper right door located here. Once you're into the next room, head to the left, you'll notice a clock above and another door where you'll make it to the boss chamber here. For this soldier, all you're going to do is run up to him, hit him. He'll then break apart. Be careful of the parts where he breaks apart so they don't end up running into you. He'll then reform, and then you move close again and do the same thing, breaking him into several different pieces and just making sure that you watch out for the pieces as they are broken. It won't take too long, though, for him to be defeated, and you'll go through the door and go into the boss rush before we make it to Lord Malice. Once outside of the area, you'll have to re-battle the first 3 bosses of the game, including the tree stump at the beginning here, who once again just moves back and forth. It's the same exact fights that you've already done, so if you were able to master and get by them no problem in the previous versions of them, you'll have no problem with them here. After defeating the tree stump, continue over to the right and you'll have the giant flower. Once again, just be sure to duck when it's spouting out the other little flowers or poison or whatever they are, and you'll be able to avoid them as they can't get low enough in order to make contact with you. After the flower's done, it's time to re-battle the giant bird. Wait for him to dive down, and of course jump up with your short jump and attack him, and then you'll be able to hit him a couple of times as he's low before he'll travel back up into the sky just like before. And once he's done though, we'll be able to move on to the final boss of the game. It's now time for the final boss of the game. He is the toughest enemy you fought, and being the final boss he should, but still relatively easy in the scheme of things. You can use a lightning move if you want to in order to hit him, but you can easily defeat him with the spinning dress move as well. Run up close and hit him, and a lot of times he'll just keep trying to move his arms and open them up, and if you duck down in front of him, he won't even be able to hit you. In fact, the invincibility that he gives you every time you deliver a hit is enough that his moves won't end up hurting you. He'll jump easily right over your head, and you'll be able to run up to behind him and in order to deliver another hit to him right away. Just keep repeating the process. It does take several hits for him to go down, but once he's defeated, the screen will flash white and you'll get to sit back and enjoy the ending to Happily Ever After. So there you have it, Happily Ever After for the NES, a game that was never released officially, but thankfully a prototype was found so that we were able to experience at least it in its most finished form that we know of. With a little bit of polish, a few more levels, and just maybe a few little changes here and there, it honestly could have been a halfway decent licensed game for the NES, and with so many terribly licensed games available for the system, it would have at least been an okay experience. Maybe not the best by any means, but definitely better than a lot of other licensed games, especially during the course of the early 90s, when we ended up getting a lot of the THQ licensed games like Swamp Thing or Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. At the end, though, you get to see your final high score as well as the end at the bottom, and then you could reset the system and start it all over again. But with that, that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. Now, if you enjoyed this prototype, check out another prototype I did for a Sega Genesis game of Ninja Gaiden. I did it a while back, but it's still an interesting look at another prototype game. Of course, I also need to thank all the members of my Patreon. Without your guys' continued support, I wouldn't be able to keep doing these videos and continue to update on a regular basis. So thank you guys so much. And if you'd like to help out, just click the little Patreon button right down below. But anyway guys, thank you again, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.